This has been brought out in much greater relief. The destructive activities of the Quds Force and Army and training, funding, and directing the special groups, as they're called, all elements, not just within the Shia community either, although, again, surprisingly there, because many of them are products of an upbringing, if you will, or funding from Iran, but also Kurdish leaders and Sunni Arab leaders. So they've all come together to support Prime Minister Maliki after he took what is seen as a courageous decision to deal with the extremist problems that had emerged in Basra. And again, regardless of, again, the after-action review on the what might have beens and again, the haste, by the way, still very much an ongoing operation. And in fact, it does continue. And now in a deliberate and if you will, a sensitive manner to try to deal with how to get the heavy weapons out of different neighborhoods. By the way, the population by and large, well, you know, it is not necessarily smitten with militias.
But yes, they're the ones who have protected them to this point.
To this point. But the violence that they have brought into the neighborhoods has certainly not been welcome as a result. So again, there's a lot of dynamics at play right now, and this is going to be a sensitive period. And I think different groups are going to have to sort of back off the ledge, if you will, because they are very much looking into the abyss. It's in no one's interest to get an increase in a level of violence that you could foresee, again, if certain developments take place.
But the militias aren't going anywhere, are they? I mean, they are still the fundamental building block of Iraqi power.
Well, certainly there are going to be militias associated with different political elements. The question is, again, what's the nature of their involvement? Are they just protecting political parties, their leaders, their convoys, or what have you, or are they actively carrying out violence against other parties? Are they actively carrying out criminal actions, again, acts of violence?
Well, then, you touched on the issue of Iran. Let's have a quick look at that then. Is the threat of Iran overblown?
Well, it's a very significant one. Again, it depends on what perspective one approaches this, but clearly Iran's level of involvement, and in many respects malign involvement, is of genuine concern by really all Iraqi leaders. One minister, I think, put it very concisely during the visit of President Ahmadinejad, and fairly courageously, I guess. And he said, we welcome Iranian religious tourists, which they very much do. It has spurred the development, of course, of the holy cities of Najaf and Karbala enormously. A lot of money is brought in with that. We welcome their goods and services. We welcome their investment money. We don't welcome their bombs. And that does capture it. And I think they have seen their bombs, their rockets, their mortars, their EFPs, explosively formed penetrators, projectiles, in recent weeks in a way that they had not been so clear to them before. And again, Iran is going to have to come to grips with its own conflictions between wanting to wish us ill and not wanting the first Shia-led Arab country fail.
Because how can you rely upon, say, this Iraqi government in your efforts to curb Iranian influence in Iraq, given that the major building blocks of this government are all parties linked to Iran in one way or another, be it through financial or military support, be it actually created in Iran, or even with the Kurdish parties who have to maintain a long-standing association with Iran? How can you rely on them given that Iran's influence is so heavily entrenched in the very political structure?
I mean, you have correctly painted a very stark reality that has to be acknowledged, has to be dealt with. But there is another reality, and that is a keen Iraqi desire for sovereignty. Iraq's a big country. It's a potentially very wealthy country. It has no desire to be the 51st state of Iran, if you will. By the way, it's also Arab, and Iran is Persian. They speak different languages, although they share a religion. The bulk of Iraqis, and certainly the vast majority of Iranians and share the reverence for the holy cities and so forth. At the end of the day, the Iraqi prime minister does want to be the leader of a sovereign country, recognizing again what he has to deal with as his neighbor to the east.
But I mean, your strategy to curb their influence, surely it must be much more targeted than relying on an Arab-Persian divide or Sunni and Shia differences. I mean, Lebanese Hezbollah is Arab, and they're far from shaking off the yoke of Iranian support. Hamas is Sunni, and yet they're still actively involved in the Iranian sphere of influence. So surely your strategy has something much more focused than that.
Well, it does, obviously.
What are you doing?
Well, I mean, what we are doing is we are working to interdict the flow of weapons. We'll lay out at some point. We have quite a display of weaponry that has been seized in caches, has been turned over to us by local civilians and so forth, that has been captured. Individuals who were trained in Iran. You know, there's one group of 16 master trainers. There are 4 of those that are in detention. Of course, we captured the head of the special groups last year.
Qais Khazali.
Qais Khazali, the deputy commander of Lebanese Hezbollah Department 2800 in detention. So, again, there is quite a level of understanding. Now, admittedly, that has been added to considerably in recent months as a result of some of the detentions. And then even more so in recent weeks with, again, what we've seen, the violence in response to the operation in Basra.
Well, that's on the military side of Iran's strategy. The head of the Quds Force, General Soleimani, and his men would be directing that paramilitary activity. But what, say, can you do about what the National Security Council called during the announcement of the surge in January 2007, the burrowing of Iranian actors into Iraqi institutions? And you would know as well that many of your intelligence agencies say Iranian agents of influence stretch to the highest levels of the Iraqi government. We've seen the interdiction by the president of Iraq during the detentions of some of the Quds Force operatives. Yeah, does that concern you?
Again, it's a reality.
That there is that kind of infiltration.
It's a reality. Again, look, as you pointed out earlier, but again for the listeners, your audience, these parties are products, many of them, of time in Iran. It's where a number of the current Iraqi leaders spent their time in exile, where they went when pursued by Saddam's army or his thugs. So a lot of that is understandable, and again, it is a reality, and it's something that just has to be dealt with. At the end of the day, though, there is, as Ambassador Crocker occasionally terms it, a self-limiting aspect to Iranian involvement in Iraq. And you do see that right now. You see leaders of parties that, again, have benefited financially, physically, all kinds of different ways from their relationships with Iran, now being gravely concerned about what the special groups and to a degree the militias are doing in Iraq. And they also realize that they have to, again, this is going to take a very, very comprehensive approach. There's a reason that there are people that join militias, and it's because they don't have other opportunities. It's because they don't have the education. They don't have the economic opportunities out there. And so, in fact, Prime Minister, I think it was the Prime Minister, just announced the other day, or one of the members of government, as an example, a $350 million aid package for Basra, Baghdad, and Mosul, all areas that have been affected by recent fighting. It's going to take a lot more than that, obviously, but a lot of outreach. And again, I think you have to acknowledge and accept the fact that a movement that has 30 seats in the Council of Representatives that helped elect Prime Minister Maliki has to be dealt with, has to be included, and has to be, again, treated like the important political element that it is, and also is, again, has the name of a very, very respected and revered martyr, the martyr Sadr. So,
Well, then tell me, General, who is your enemy in Iraq? I mean, you've got Al-Qaeda under pressure. They're an organisation under run. They're only of marginal influence at any point anyway. Who are you fighting, and who is killing your soldiers right now? Who are killing the American soldiers?
I would have, the way we have put it traditionally about Al-Qaeda, by the way, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, is to say that that's the wolf closest to the sled. It has been. Now, again, it's one of those how quickly we forget. But remember the damage done by Al-Qaeda Iraq, blowing up the Sharjah market, the Predators market, all of these different...
the Yazidi community.
Twos. Again, the
But at the end of the day,
damage.
That's not the real dynamic of this war now, is it?
Right now,
it's one aspect.
It is one aspect.
But what's the real
very,
dynamic?
very important aspect. I would say that it's a multidimensional enemy. And you can't at all lose sight or lose focus on Al-Qaeda. In fact, as I pointed out on Capitol Hill, it takes a very comprehensive approach to an enemy like Al-Qaeda Iraq and their, again, extremist allies. But they have less running room. This is a wolf that, again, doesn't...
Absolutely.
It's not as strong. It still has fangs. It's still
terrible. And that's agreed. But who else is out there, General?
Clearly, again, the Iranian-supported special groups are, right now, again, very, very difficult enemy. They are killing our soldiers. They are shooting rockets at the Iraqi seat of government, at the international zone, where we and they have facilities, where there are people trying to help this country and instead are finding themselves under fire.
Well, I remember General Odieno at the end of last year was saying in the last quarter of 2007, more American troops were dying at the hands of Iranian-backed militias than at the hands of Al-Qaeda or the Sunni insurgents. Would you say that that's still correct?
I certainly in the last few weeks. Again, I'd have to look back at that particular time because there have been periods in which we've had tough fights. Each time we go into an area where there is significant Al-Qaeda Iraq presence, so that when we went into, again, Mosul in a more substantial manner with more Iraqi forces as well, with more special elements and so forth, obviously they're going to put up a fight. That is still very much ongoing, will take months.
Right.
Again, if you think about how long it took in some of these other areas to just to clear and hold and build, and yet this is a city of 1.6 or 7 million, not 400,000 or 300,000 the way, say, a Ramadi or a Bakuba were when they were cleared and held. So you've got to keep a focus on Al-Qaeda Iraq. It is the enemy that still wants to reignite sectarian violence, that does the most horrific damage to the population, to innocent civilians, and to the infrastructure, although that has obviously rebounded against them. It has led to the rejection by those communities that suffered at their hands, and they don't want a part of them unless there's some other reason, unless they're pressured by some other ethno-sectarian pressure. And so then you have to attack that as well, and that, again, was part of that comprehensive approach.
And all that's correct, but beyond Al-Qaeda, General?
Beyond it, clearly. Again, as I mentioned, the malign influence that is posed and presented by Iran. And again, the ambassador and I think we're pretty clear about that on Capitol Hill, as has been General Odierno in the past as well. And
just finally then, with this threat of Iran's paramilitary activity and its consolidation of its influence, what's the worst case scenario for America in that regard? What's so bad if Iran does establish such a firm toehold in Iraq?
Well, I think, again, the question is, what is the character of that involvement? How malign is it? Do they allow Iraq to succeed, again, as the first Shia Arab state, to let this new country in this ancient land actually prosper and flourish? Or do they somehow try to control it or use it as a tool or what have you? And again, that is a concern that is probably even more in the Iraqi leaders, arguably, than it may be with us. And it is why they have sent, in recent weeks, very direct messages